Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to our guest from Naga and from Pigsan. We're happy to have you here. Today, I'm going to discuss this. Except for an elect few, man's carnal mind is enemy against God. Is enmity against God, for it is not subject to the law of God. We know this. By nature, man is against God. But when a man's world falls apart, something happens. Something esoteric happens at the moment his knee touches the ground. What is this world apart? When people get sick, what is the first thing they do? Pray. When somebody lost a good job, what is the first thing they do? Fall on their knee and pray. When they have a big problem in the family, what do? They fall on their knee and pray. What is that? Humility is manifested when they start praying. Initially, they thought they don't need God. But when they have problems, they realize it is only God that can resolve their problems. So today, I'm gonna discuss with you what is humility. First, let's define humility. What is humility? If you look at the dictionary, the first thing you look at is Webster. The definition is just that, using the same word to define humility. It didn't say anything. Next is, if you have a computer, you go to Encarta. Encarta, sabi, being modest and respectful. Oh, may dadagdag. Hindi lang just humble. A lot of people, though, who are biblical scholars, use a different dictionary. They call this Easton's. Let's see its definition. Humility is a state of mind well-pleasing to God. He didn't say anything. What is pleasing to God? It preserves the soul in tranquility and makes one patient under trials. Wala din sinabi. It is the opposite of pride. Ayan, may sinabi. So here, we have three words: modest, respectful, opposite of pride. What does the Bible say about humility? The Bible uses two languages. In the Old Testament, it used Hebrew. In Hebrew, humility is gentleness, meekness. That's what it says about humility in two plain words. The New Testament used Greek. So in Greek, medyo mahirap i-pronounce. Tapinofroso ne. Ang haba. So, which means modesty. Ayun, tumama dito si Carta. Lawlessness of mind. But, just to look at definition will not really give us an idea what humility is, what the Bible is saying about humility. So, what I did here is try to get an example of a humble person. Those of you who knows about Solomon, you know that Solomon was very humble at the beginning because he was young. He asked God to give him wisdom to govern the Israelites, yung mga matitigas ang ulo, which God granted. Not only wisdom, but also wealth. However, because of the so many wives he has, yung carnal mind niya started to transgress the law. So, I don't think he's a good example. He may be humble at first, but then there's transgression. The next example, look at. Moses has been discussed so many times. He's a meek man. So does David, who is close to the heart of God. Maraming discussion yan. So this time, I tried to look at the life of Paul, or Saul. Paul is a learned man, especially in the law. Second, he is the persecutor of the Christians when the Christian started to proliferate. Pinapatay niya, hinuhuli niya. But then, he has to fall on his knees when his world fall apart. He got blinded. He was chastened by God and was blinded. From then on, his story take a different turn. Let's look at the life of Paul. This is in his word. I, Saul, that was his name before, bago naging Paul, am indeed a Jew. So he's a Jew. Born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in this city. This city is Jerusalem. At the feet of Gamaliel, yun ang teacher niya. Yung Pharisee na sinabi doon sa mga Pharisee, huwag niyong persecuting yung Christians because if that is not of God, it will die its own. Si Gamaliel yun. So, alam niya, he knows the law very well. Taught according to strictness of your father's law and was zealous towards God as you all are today. We cannot say that he does not have a God. He knows there's God and is zealous about it. He is a Pharisee, the son of a Pharisee. Talagang true and true learned siya. Alam niya ang batas. On top of that, he is a Roman citizen. It's very hard to be a Roman citizen. Either you are born a Roman or you bought your citizenship. Why is Roman citizenship important? Because it is respected throughout the region that is controlled by Rome. But what is Paul? What is Saul? Ito ang ginagawa niya. I persecuted the followers of this way, which is Christianity, to their death, arresting both men and women and throwing them into prison. Kalaban talaga siya. As also the high priest and all the council can testify, I even obtained letters from them to their brothers in Damascus. Ito yung last trip niya before he changed. And went there to bring these people as prisoners to Jerusalem to be punished. He is an enemy of the Christian faith. But he is a zealous God believer. Ito ang nangyari. This make him change. This is the time when he fall, when his world fall apart, and he has to fall on his knee. About noon, as I came near Damascus, suddenly a bright light from heaven flashed around me. I fell to the ground and heard a voice say to me, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? It is not really the Christians, the new Christian that Saul is persecuting, but Jesus Christ, who started the movement for the kingdom of God through His gospel. Sinagot niya, who are you, Lord? I asked. I am Jesus of Nazareth, whom you are persecuting. God was very emphatic about this. My companions saw the light, but they did not understand the voice of him who was speaking to me. Hindi na naintindihan. Siguro ang salita ay different language. Only Paul can understand. What shall I do, Lord? I asked. Get up, the Lord said, and go to Damascus. There you will be told all that you have been assigned to do. So Jesus have assigned him a job. My companions led me by the hand into Damascus because the brilliance of the light had blinded me. Wala na. Those of us who are getting old experience this. When we have cataract, we see that our vision humihina. Siya completely blind. Kaya, you really have to be dependent on other people. So, this is what happened in Damascus. A man named Ananias came to see me. He was a devout observer of the law and highly respected by all the Jews living there. Probably, he may not be a Pharisee, probably he's a scribe. Kasi alam niya lahat eh. He stood beside me and said, Brother Saul, receive your sight. Oh, sinabihan. Of course, Ananias was first instructed by Jesus to cure Paul. This was in the earlier chapter of Acts. Then he said, the God of our fathers has chosen you to know His will and to see the righteous one. This is Jesus, and to hear words from His mouth. So, Paul gets direct instruction from the righteous one, Jesus. You will be His witness to all men of what you have seen and heard. Seen and heard, Paul was already there when Jesus was preaching. And he was also there when Jesus was crucified. Otherwise, he cannot be a witness to what he has seen and heard. This is an interesting part. And now, what are you waiting for? Ananias said, get up, be baptized, and wash your sins away, calling on His name. The Pharisees have been baptized in their own way. But then, Paul, in order to execute the job that Jesus wants him to do, has to be baptized. Similarly to all of us, anybody who wants to go through the way of God has to be baptized. It is a first requirement. It is the first acceptance into the kingdom when we are given the Spirit. So, what happened to Paul? Saul was converted from an avid persecutor of Christians to a staunch witness renamed Paul. Nag-change na ng pangalan. Kasi pag sinabing Saul, people were afraid of him. Even Christians were afraid of him. So, he changed his name. Propagating the gospel to the Gentiles. He was sent to the Gentiles. Kasi doon sa mga Jews, maraming apostles eh. There are 10 of them. O 11. Nagdagdag ng isa na mawala si Judas. So siya has been really assigned to the Gentiles for 3 reasons. One, he is very knowledgeable. He knows the law. He knows about Jewish law. He knows about the laws of the different countries. Number 2, he is a Roman. Wherever he go, he will be respected if no he's a Roman. And number 3, he has been chastened. With the chastening that he received, the blindness that was cured, that is inculcated in his mind that he is lucky or he is blessed to be serving God. So, that's why he became a staunch witness. In Paul's humble words, this is what he said. I served the Lord with great humility, with tears, although I was severely tested by the plots of the Jews. The word Jews here refers to the learned Pharisees, Sadducees. He too was persecuted like Jesus during his time. Itong mga ito, maliligalig, yung mga marurunong, considering that he is one of them. But then he changed his ways. This is classic. He said in 1 Corinthians, I am the least of the apostles. I am less than the least of all the saints. See what he's saying about himself? I am the worst of sinners. In Timothy, he said that before his head was chopped when he finished the race. This is how humble Paul is, despite his stature. So, what is this humility we're talking of? The many facets of humility. Humility can be shown to others. We can show humility to others. Or, we can show it especially to the elders, not only to others. Specific ang Bible about humility to elders. Humility to enemies. Ay, ito pinakamahirap, di ba? When Jesus said, You may follow the law and do good to your friends. But what is it? It is doing good to your enemies that really counts. So yeah, may humility ka sa enemies dapat. And of course, humility to God. Number one. And then, there is humility in correction. If you are criticized, somebody says you're wrong, that is where you show humility. Hindi yung ira-rationalize mo, sasabihin mo, kasi ganun, kasi. Wala. Correction is necessary for everybody. Then, this is what Jesus said, humility of a child. And number 7, humility as demonstrated by Jesus. What is this? Now, let's look at each one and the corresponding verses about it. Humility is considering others better than oneself. That is humility to others. Hindi yung very proud ka, sarili mo, panay, pagaypay ng iyong pakpak. Hindi. What the Bible said here is that, ito, writer si Paul, Philippians. Paul has written 13 epistles. If we include Hebrews, it's 14. But then, dahil ibang opening niya sa Hebrews compared to the rest of the 13, a lot of people say it's not written by him. See? Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourself. Each of you should look not only to your own interest, but also to the interest of others. We don't have to explain that. It explains itself. The second, humility to elders. Humility is respecting elders. Pag wala kayong respeto sa matanda, you're not humble, you're proud. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 5 said, likewise, you younger people, submit yourselves to your elders. Ngayon, bihira na ito eh. Very seldom do I see young people na luluhod, magmamano, sabihin, mano po. Wala na eh. That's one respect. This is very common to Filipinos 10 years ago, even earlier. Today, bihira nang nakikita kong ganyan. Yes, all of you be submissive to one another and be clothed in humility. For God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. The third facet of humility. Humility is forgiveness and reconciliation. If you have an enemy, kailangan forgive mo. Ito, hindi nga, yung example dito, hindi nga enemy. But then, somehow it gives us the message. Therefore, if you are offering your gift of the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you. Oh, may galit yung brother mo sa'yo o may galit ka sa brother mo. Huwag mo munang ibigay yung gift. Leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to your brothers. Then come, offer your gift. Importante yan. Otherwise, you are not doing what God said. Ito, word ni Jesus. Basta pula, word ni Jesus. Humility is walking in deference to the Lord. That is, walking humbly with the Lord. Ito, sinabi dyan, Micah 6:8, He has shown you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justly, to have mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Ayan. Assuming si Jesus yan, ito, He walks humbly with Him, nakayuko. Hawak-hawak ni Jesus. Very important. Unless we humble ourselves to God, we'll have problems. Number 5, humility is accepting correction graciously. If somebody criticizes you, say you're wrong, don't rationalize. Say why. What can I do? Sabi in Proverbs, whoever heeds life-giving correction will be at home among the wise. So unless you accept correction, wala, you'll be at home with the fools. Humility is to remain teachable as a child. Jesus said, "Assuredly, I say to you, unless you are converted and becomes as little child, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven." So, if you are not teachable as a little child and you open your mind, hindi ka makakapasok doon sa kingdom of heaven. Jesus said, "Therefore, whoever humbles himself as this little child is the greatest among the kingdom of heaven." Sinasabi niya, kailangan yung mind natin will be fresh. Will think like little children. Always wanting to learn. Even if we already know things, we should be humble enough to accept that there are still other things we can learn. And number 7, humility is leveling oneself with servants. Ito yung pinakita sa atin ni Jesus during Passover. Now, this is the story. He rose from supper, just Jesus yan, and laid aside his garments, took a towel and girded himself. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet, and to wipe them with the towel with which he was girded. Let's say this is the scenario in that room. Ayan. Yung 11, hinugasan niya lahat ang paa. Si Peter, nagrereklamo pa nga there's a long story na, "Lord, wag mo ako maghugas sa'yo." Sabi, unless magpahugas ka ng paa, you have no business to be in my kingdom. So lahat, yung 11, wala na dyan si Judas. Pinagkanulo na siya. So, when he had washed their feet, taken his garments, and sat down again, he said to them, "Do you know what I have done to you?" Ano ang pinakitang example ni Jesus? "You call me teacher and Lord, and you say, well, for so I am." So sinasabi na, "Lord, you're the boss. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you should do as I have done." Well, it's not really necessary that we do washing of feet. Kasi nung panahon nila, wala silang sapatos sandals. Whenever they walk, ang dumi ng paa, alikabok. So whenever they enter a house, there are servants that are ready to wash your feet. This is only an example. We can be in good service to our brethren, not necessarily washing feet, but helping. Feed them, talk to them. If there are problems, sympathize with their problems, give advices. Yun sinasabi. This is just the example. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. Yung sinabi doon, yung 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, if you do them, you'll be blessed. Happy Sabbath.